So far we have looked at maple trees and we've looked at hickory trees, two common trees in this area. Another tree that is very common in this area is the oak tree, which you can finally see up here. The oak tree is an important source of lumber in this area, both for furniture making and construction and also for firewood. In addition, oak trees produce acorns, which they drop to the ground in the fall. These acorns then provide an important winter food source for squirrels, and chipmunks, and many other animals. Here we see a maple leaf between two oak leaves. There's a couple of differences that you should note pretty easily. Number one is the maple leaf tends to be wider than it is long. Oak leaves tend to be the opposite. There are exceptions, but they are generally longer than they are wide. The other main difference is the veining pattern that we can see on the reverse of all three of these leaves. With the maple leaf, all the veins, the major veins going out to the ends of the fingers of the leaf, all start from the same point at the base of the leaf where it connects to the stem. With the oak leaves, the veins going out to the points of the fingers branch off the main vein. There are several different varieties of oak trees that can be found in this area, and they can be fiendishly difficult to tell apart. There's a lot of variety in size and shape even on the same tree. Plus a lot of the different species have leaves that look very similar to each other. So I'm not going to worry too much about individual species of oak trees. But in general, oak trees can be divided into two broad categories or families: the red oak family and the white oak family. And looking at these two leaves here, you can see the difference quite easily. On the left is a red oak, or a member of the red oak family. And you'll notice that the fingers of the leaf end in a sharp point. On the right is a member of the white oak family. And as you can see, those fingers are rounded at the end. This oak tree here has leaves with rounded fingers, and it's a member of the white oak family. This tree here has leaves with fingers that end in points, with even bristles at the very end. This is a member of the red oak family. There are many species of oak trees in this area, and it can be very, very difficult to distinguish between different species there. For our purposes, if you can tell the difference between red oaks and white oaks, if you can tell the difference between these two groups, you're in good shape. Oak trees are among the tallest trees that grow in this part of the country. As they grow, they tend to drop their lower branches, so that often an oak tree will be 50, 60 feet up in the air before you even see any of its leaves. This can make getting a close-up look at the leaves fairly difficult, especially in our school's nature trail, because we don't have a lot of young oak trees growing along the side of the trail. They all tend to be fairly mature. However, if you're willing to get off the nature trail and stomp through the woods a little bit, after first checking for poison ivy, of course, we can see a few smaller ones here where we can get a closer look at the leaves. This is a member of the white oak family here. And if we go in a little bit deeper, we'll also see a fairly representative member of the red oak family, which is this young tree right here. So as long as we're willing to wander into the woods a little bit, we can see some of the leaves close up. Generally, it's fairly easy to distinguish an oak tree from other types of trees by their leaves. And you shouldn't have too much difficulty telling the difference between an oak, a hickory, and a maple. However, it can often be very difficult to distinguish between an oak tree and a can of tuna fish. So I would like to point out a couple of key differences between canned tuna and an oak tree. The first difference is the height. Yes, there is a lot of variation in height in both oak trees and containers of tuna. But in general, the oak tree tends to be much taller than a can of tuna fish. Another important difference is the bark. On an oak tree, the bark is attached quite firmly and difficult, if not impossible, to break off. On a can of tuna fish, however, the bark is much easier. In fact, you can actually peel the bark off with a fingernail. Finally, the third difference is in the leaves. Oak leaves tend to be fairly leathery. You could break it with your fingernail, but on whole, they're pretty tough. Also, most oak leaves tend to be darker on the top than on the underside. There's quite a striking difference. Where a can of tuna fish, well, that doesn't have any leaves at all. So that's another way you can tell them apart. By now, this far into our class, you should be able to tell the difference between maple trees, hickory trees, oak trees, preferably between members of the red oak family and the white oak family, and of course, canned tuna fish.